It's termed vegetative propagation. Propagation means continue or make more of, and it's vegetative because we're talking about plants. Okay, so remember, this process is just mitosis. Okay. Now, I know plants aren't too interesting, but I guess the reason you're learning about plants is because plants offer you a window of insight into the complexity of humans. There are a lot of similarities at a cellular level between a plant and a human. So when you understand how plants reproduce, human reproduction and cell reproduction makes much, much more sense. Okay? And the other interesting thing, plants are actually quite interesting when you take a deep look into them. Do they have an immune system, everyone? Plants. Do plants have an immune system? Abhishek, what do you think?
I don't think so.
In Mod 7, you'll learn that they actually do. They have ways to identify if they're being infected. They have ways internally to tell the time. That's something we have struggled to understand even with the human body, but we understood better with plants, that they have a circadian rhythm, right? So it's quite interesting that plants are not just, sitting around looking green and pretty. They actually are very complex. In fact, they're one of the only life forms on this planet that can literally take energy from the sun and convert it to chemicals, which we as humanity have never or likely will never ever be able to do. Good. Coming back to vegetative propagation, we said mitosis, full stop, right? So I guess the only thing you need to know is a type of vegetative propagation. And the way you break this down to make your life very easy is, what are the two parts of a plant? Literally, a plant can be divided into this artistic Picasso depiction. It's a leaf and it's a stem for all of you who are confused about what you're looking at. And I've drawn some squiggly lines at the bottom. So I'm going to divide it here. There'll be an upper portion and a lower portion. Harsha, what do we call the upper portion and what do we call the lower portion? Any ideas?
The lower portion is the root system.
Yeah, exactly, right? Roots. And what about the upper portion?
The stem.
Yeah,
Shoot.
the stem, or you call the entire thing the shoot system. So that's all I want you to know, right? It's either the shoot system, or yes, as you can mention, you can call it the stem. And I guess just to give you a bit more terminology, there are often branches off that main stem, and we call those stalks. Okay, so this is your stem, your stalk. So the different types of vegetative propagation just have to do with the different parts of that plant that undergo mitosis to make an identical daughter plant. Okay, so I guess the first one you can understand are runners. And I will urge you all, don't memorize this in too much detail. In the HSC, they're never going to say, give me an example of a runner. It's very low yield. The HSC does not work that way. It'll always be application questions. So as long as you get the idea of thinking about it, I'm happy. Okay, so mitosis of the shoot or the root. And if it is mitosis of that shoot system, we can call it a runner. So a runner is an example where the stem undergoes mitosis to make a new plant. Full stop. That's all you need to know. Okay, if you'd like, just understand the spinifex is one example, and you can all see that happening, right? If you look deep closely at what's going on, that's, we do it in a different color. That could be a shoot system, and off that stem, you get this runner, and it's making new plants. Does everyone see that? New plants that are forming from mitosis of that stem, which is part of the shoot system. So the spinifex grass is one example of a plant that does that. Okay, there are many other examples of giving you tubers, rhizomes, all these fancy terms. Again, like I told you, they're never going to ask you for specific plant examples, but I would say just remember two. So I remember runners and I remember rhizomes because they sound funny, but you can pick whatever you'd like. There's suckers as well, which are root systems, as we spoke about, and I've given you an example plant for every single one. Okay? But like I'm telling you all, this is low yield. The only way they ask you, show you a question. This is from the 2020 HSC paper. I think you've all done this question possibly, but give it a go. 30 seconds before I start asking you. hopefully this question will teach you something very important, which is the goal of MCQ in biology. A lot of students don't understand it, even going to year 12. Varun, any ideas what you think the answer could be? Take me through A. Just go A, B, C, and D. Because remember, for MCQ, the goal is eliminating the crap answers, right? You always want to work through the process of elimination. So take me through A, Varun.
Yeah, so A, pollination caused by dispersal of seeds.
What do you think about that?
I think it's a viable option because pollination is the sexual reproduction in plants. So
good job. Okay, we'll come back to that. What about B? So, like you, I would have put a question mark here first of all, but let's keep going. Let me ask Raya, what do you think about B? Now, this word, what do you think about that, Raya?
I think we can like cancel out B as an option because cloning means like identical. So
Yeah,
B sexual.
exactly. You'll learn the mechanisms as to how humans have managed to clone organisms like Dolly the sheep, which is pretty insane. And I'll teach you all why Dolly died so quickly. But yeah, B is not correct because cloning quite literally means identical copy. So that's very wrong. So if I asked you about plant cloning, hopefully all of you would say vegetative propagation is how you clone a plant. Okay, there are many other ways, but one way is literally enabling vegetative propagation to occur. Good. C. What did I say about mitosis? I stressed this. Ethan, what did we say about mitosis? Identical or non-identical cells?
Oh, it's identical.
Yes, it's not involved in sexual reproduction. And remember, meiosis is how we make pollen grains. Remember, gametes, like pollen, which is the male gamete, it's like the spermatozoa of a human, is made by meiosis. So it's a varied haploid cell. So it's definitely not C. And what about D? So we'll come back to Varun. What do you think about D?
so fertilization as a result of fusion of male and female gametes. Like at first impression, it's because this is sort of like zygotes. I'm thinking, and it's I'm thinking it's more so with like humans rather than plants.
So Varun, you're spot on. It's not even that it's sort of. This is quite literally how you make a zygote. A fusion of a male and a female gamete is the process by which you make a zygote. Now, I'll give you a little hint, Varun. I would have stressed it if it was very important. Did I ever stress that zygotes are only to do with humans?
I don't remember you saying that.
Yeah, so that would mean that zygotes is a universal term for any fusion of male and female gametes. Now, pollen, Varun, is that a male or female gamete in a plant?
Male,
Good. And the ova, which is like a human ova, is that a male or female gamete?
a female gamete.
Good. So the fusion of pollen and ova occurs in pollination. It can happen with pollen and ova of the same plant, which is self-pollination, or pollen and ova of a different plant, which is cross-pollination. Both will make a zygote, and that zygote will eventually divide in a seed. It might be sitting in a fruit to entice humans to eat it and then excrete it into the environment so a new plant can grow. It's quite a smart, nifty trick that plants have. But D is something where you can't find a fault. I think you're looking for one, which is very good. That's how you should be approaching every question. But with that MCQ with D, we can't find anything wrong with it. Because that is what sexual reproduction involves. It involves gametes that will fuse to form a zygote. Literally, word for word, every form of sexual reproduction involves gametes that will fuse by fertilization to form a zygote. That is the definition. That is why it's sexual. So what about A? Can anyone tell me what's wrong with A? I'll give you a hint because there is something very wrong with it. Lookman?
Well, pollination is not actually caused by the dispersal of seeds.
There
Instead,
you go.
it's caused by the pollen actually landing on the stigma, then going down to the ovary.
Perfect, right? So pollination is quite literally the the movement of pollen down the stigma, style, and ova of another plant or the same plant itself. Seed dispersal is a whole other thing. I think this is what they were testing, that we need pollination, and that pollination is going to form a seed. And an event that happens after all of the pollination will be a method of seed dispersal. Has anyone blown a dandelion? Maybe picked one up from the grass, made a wish, thinking you might go to the North Pole and blown it away? Now, what you just did was you encouraged seed dispersal. You were a victim of that plant, and it used you and your kinetic energy for its own seed dispersal. So that's a mechanism that happens after the seed is formed. But when we're talking about pollination, the seed hasn't even formed yet. You need it to form the seed. So the causation is what is completely incorrect. So that would make D your answer, and A would be incorrect. So hopefully this question taught you that for HSC Bio, there'll always be two answers that are completely bad. There'll be two answers that are similar. And the goal of the HSC is to find the best answer. Does that make sense? There might be two correct answers. You want to nitpick them and find the better answer. And that is what makes MCQs hard in bio. You sometimes will get two correct answers. You will just have to look at the wording and find which one makes more sense and which one is less incorrect. Okay.